Can using a certain ammo in self-defense make you look guilty or guiltier in court? Tom, have you heard of a case or been involved in a case or thought about a case in which somebody using a certain style of firearm, maybe a certain type of ammunition, or maybe even a caliber, if somebody's out there, with the 44 Magnum or a 10 millimeter, where when they get to court, that is used against them. The prosecutor is like, well, this guy must be guilty because of this style of firearm type, caliber, something like that.
Yes. I've been in court when both prosecutors and judges have attacked people for carrying ammunition that expands on impact.
Like a hollow point?
Like a hollow point.
Like the police carry?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And also ammunition that does not expand on impact, because that's military grade, and no civilian ought to possess something that's military grade. That's almost a direct quote, "Don't shoot me, the messenger." I'm paraphrasing. Well, that might be verbatim, actually.
Yeah, well, that just shows exactly how crazy things can get in the courtroom.
It's a total lack of gun knowledge is just what it is. And there's no other way around that. And it was a failure on the defense attorney's part to, A, not anticipate that, and B, not address that before it happened. And there's a lot of things that defense attorneys have to deal with on the fly. A prosecutor makes some comment on a left field, someone in the gallery shouts something or whatever. Okay, there was no planning for that. But if you're in a county that's, typically in kind of more urban metropolitan areas where it's entirely reasonable to anticipate that your prosecutor, your judge may have never even handled a firearm before. They don't know the difference between these things. All they know is that, hey, when I Googled this, it came up as military grade ammunition, regulated by the Geneva or Hague Convention.
Yeah.
That sounds scary. And why did this guy have this scary thing? Obviously, those kind of fall on, to my view, the ridiculous end of the spectrum, right? Sorry, New Jersey, but it falls on the ridiculous end of the spectrum.
Yeah. I'm pausing the video quickly to remind you that we have a secret giveaway going on that ends really soon, and it's free to enter. Just click the link in the description below to reveal what you could win. Now back to the video.
It falls on the ridiculous end of the spectrum, right?
And for those who don't know, New Jersey bans the use of expanding ammunition. You must use military-grade ammo.
Outside the home, at least, if memory serves, right? Yeah, I'm not a New Jersey attorney. That's not legal advice. Yeah. But, on the more serious note, look, so let's kind of take this apart one at a time. I guess let's start with caliber, right? Most common self-defense calibers, 9mm, probably 22. And probably 380, maybe 38 special or something like that. Throw in a 40 S&W and a 45 ACP. We've probably covered, 90% of the spectrum, if I had to guess, at least by frequency, probably much higher than that. Any prosecutor judge, as I just illustrated, which is the reason why I started with that, they can say anything at any time, whether or not it has any relationship with reality. We have to isolate and control for those, because we can't. If that happens, that happens. We can try to address it, but if that's what's going to happen, that's what's going to happen. I think once you kind of get outside those mainstream, I can imagine that an enterprising prosecutor who probably doesn't know any better may try to make hay, so to speak. They may try to use your 10 millimeter. Well, I Googled it, and that's an Alaskan bear defense gun, the Glock G20 and 10 millimeter. He's hunting for bears in our shopping malls and wherever this self-defense incident took place. So, sure. And again, don't shoot the messengers here, right? Can I imagine a prosecutor or a judge saying that? Unfortunately, yes. Am I suggesting that 10 millimeter is some sort of totally outside the box, like a 500 Smith & Wesson, or something like that? No, I'm not suggesting that. And I'm not trying to tell people don't carry 500 Smith & Wessons. I'm just saying this. If you're going to use a firearm self-defense, know how to shoot it accurately, and keep in mind over-penetration is very real. And if you decided to carry a 400 grain Underwood loaded 500 Smith & Wesson, with probably 2,500 pounds of energy at the muzzle, that was entirely foreseeable, as you'll hear the attorneys read back to you in court, that even if you shot the bad guy, that it was going to go through the bad guy with your hard cast extreme penetrator bullets, and it's going to keep going.
Yeah, through his car, through the next house.
Right, exactly. I say this as somebody who owns 500 Smith & Wesson and likes 500 Smith & Wesson, so I'm not beating up 500 Smith & Wesson here. What I am beating up is the fact that certain things are foreseeable when we talk about handguns, when we talk about calibers, and as long as you can, to my view, effectively use that, great. In a perfect world, do we want kind of the gray man gun, as I've heard a wise man say? Yeah. I think that you're eliminating variables for your attorney to deal with, right? And you're eliminating odd things that the prosecutor or judge can try to throw at you, right? In a perfect world, I'd probably want my client to be using the same firearm, the same caliber, the same ammo as that bailiff in court, as another man once said, right? That's about as safe as lane as you could be in at that point. Would I feel constrained to do only that? Absolutely not.
Yeah, and I think the long and short of this is to make sure that if you're in that situation, you have a knowledgeable defense attorney who understands firearms, who isn't going into this blind or without, an understanding of what it is you are carrying and why. And maybe that's for you to explain to your defense attorney, or hopefully you get one who knows that sort of stuff.
Right. And those are very few and far between. And that goes back to, just being able to talk to a defense attorney ahead of a case ever happening, and try to pick their brain. You don't have to be a drug addict to defend a drug case, just like you don't have to be a cancer surgeon who have had cancer before to be good at it. But I will pick a bone there when we're talking about firearm cases. I think having a firsthand knowledge, not just I went out to the range and squeezed off a few rounds on Saturday morning. I mean, being, for lack of a better way of putting it, being a gun man or woman defense attorney who really understands this stuff. Now, that should not overshadow the other qualifications of being a great attorney.
Yeah.
I don't want to hire a crappy attorney who happens to be a great shooter, right? So you need to find a balance of those two. But and if push comes to shove, I'm erring on the side of getting the great attorney. But right, there's ways of messing it up. The firearm selection, the ammo selection, the caliber selection. But and just keep in mind, the more you deviate from kind of those boring, plain Jane, middle of the road, sure, you're opening up those attack angles. But until we get to the extremes, or unless we're talking about certain things like zombie, zombie killer ammo and that kind of stuff, which the prosecutor's opening argument writes itself at that point.
Yeah.
I would avoid things like that, kind of the gimmick ammo, which is fun. Don't get me wrong, but not when I'm putting my self-defense gun. As long as you avoid those sorts of things, you probably are going to be on pretty solid ground.